I would like to start before we say anything that this background is of Baltimore, obviously, but it wasn't said last time. So this time, before I forget.
I'm sorry. Do you mean Baltimore?
Baltimore.
Oh my gosh. Look at all the chicken boxes. Look at all the chicken boxes.
Man, I'm going to take y'all to get a chicken box.
Q&D.
And I'm going to take y'all to get a chicken box. And upon the first bite, you're going to be like, I'm sorry for everything I said. Sorry. I apologize. I'm sorry.
Listen, I like chicken. I like boxes. I feel like.
Who wouldn't want them as a combination?
I agree with you.
Salt, pepper, ketchup.
It sounds good.
Salt, pepper, ketchup.
You know what? So, one of these days, we're going to be so fancy with our podcast that we're going to be on location when we do it. And so we could actually be in Baltimore right now, like eating a chicken box. We got to start. We got to be on location.
So good idea.
We're going to be now. I don't want to be on no frontier, so I'm happy we've already done Sex with Seven Brothers. Please don't put me. I don't want to be on no frontier. Okay? Even though those men are as tall as church steeples. I don't want to be on no frontier.
Brittany, it's an inside joke for people who've seen Seven Brothers for Seven Brothers. It's not going to make sense to anybody else.
Listen.
All right, so okay. I'm sorry for derailing the whole.
That's a good starting point.
So can you go ahead and start us the right way, Genia?
Yes. Will do, bro. So the second season of the HBO show The Wire premiered on June 1st, 2003. The show follows the Baltimore Police Department as they investigate organized criminal activity. In season 1, it was primarily drugs and related local and state corruption. In season 2, we get farther up the supply chain and begin to see how local crime connects to international crime. And there's more corruption and more impact for poverty-stricken people. And we just get to see some of those same cycles from season 1 play out again, but in a more complex scenario. And so we are so excited on the Wright Perspective podcast to be going season by season through the show The Wire. And today's episode is about season 2 of The Wire. And we're going to discuss the show. We're going to recap the season. And then we're going to decide whether it gets 1, 0, 1, 2, or 3
containers.
I was going to say containers.
I think it should be containers.
I was going to say containers. That's it.
That's it.
I'm glad because that was my first. That was my first.
That's it.
Because season 2 is centered around
the docks and the containers.
The docks.
Okay.
That's good. That's very good. That's very good. So for those who who are new to our podcast, we pick a theme from the subject content, and we use that as our way of voting about whether or not we like the show. So if I like season 2 of The Wire at the end of this podcast, it will get a container from me. And we each have a container to grant.
Have a container.
At the end of this episode, we will determine if season 2 of The Wire gets 0, 1, 2, or 3 containers. Oh, let's see how it plays out.
I see
when you're down in the hole.
I see you got your coffee in.
Yeah. This is how you build excitement.
All right.
When you walk with Jesus.
So anyway, my name is Aubrey, and I'm the oldest.
I'm Genia, and I'm the middle.
I'm Brittany, and I'm the youngest.
All right. So, so you're going to first start us off with a synopsis.
Yes.
All right.
And you all, we like to start off with a synopsis in case you are listening to or watching the podcast before you've actually experienced the content yourself. So, it's hard though to recap an entire season of a complex show. Thank you, bro. Season. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. You remember that in season 1, we were following the Baltimore police as they tried to infiltrate and dismantle a drug ring called the Barksdale Organization. And it's called the Barksdale Organization, named after its leader, Avon Barksdale. We do come to learn, though, in season 1 that Barksdale is actually a family name. So it is not just Avon Barksdale. This is the Barksdale family's historic drug organization. At the end of season 1, the police hadn't really accomplished much because the Barksdale organization continued to thrive in spite of the police having locked up Avon Barksdale and a few members of his team, including his nephew, D'Angelo Barksdale. Now, season 2, right at the beginning, we do find out that the police actually had a bigger impact on the Barksdale organization than they thought, because it turns out that right around the same time that the Baltimore police made headlines for arresting Barksdale, it turns out that right around that same time, some of the primary suppliers for the Barksdale organization, so these are people higher up the drug supply chain, they were at the same time, but separately, being investigated by the DEA. And those suppliers felt like the DEA investigation that they were experiencing was somehow linked to the Barksdale organization. And so they were feeling like Barksdale had somehow given them up. And so because of that, the suppliers lost trust in the Barksdale organization and cut them off. And so the high quality product that the Barksdale organization was known for, they no longer had access to it. And so we find out that this obviously creates a big problem. And since Avon Barksdale, the actual head of the organization, is in jail, it is his second in command who has to make really the decisions about what to do. And that is our favorite, you love him, you hate him, Stringer. Okay, played by idriselba.
Stringer Bell.
So Stringer ends up making a deal with Proposition Joe. Proposition Joe is another drug ring leader in Baltimore. We might call him a competitor in the marketplace. Okay. And so Stringer ends up making a deal with Proposition Joe. And he does that without really getting permission from Avon Barksdale. Now, just because Avon is in jail, it doesn't mean that he has become powerless. He is still the leader. And Stringer Bell should have been checking in with Avon as he was making these decisions. And it's so interesting because as you are watching season 2, you start to realize that even though Avon is incarcerated, he still manages to be extremely powerful. He manages to have all manner of contraband brought to him in jail, including fast food. He's got a little television set up. He's living a relatively cushy life, all things considered. He really is. He's got like a window view, like a corner cell, and we even watch him that he manages to manipulate the legal system from inside the jail. Specifically, he uses his connections to expose one of the prison guards that has actually been bringing drugs into the jail. And this prison guard had been bringing drugs into the jail before Avon and his folks got incarcerated. And so he, for a long time, had been bringing drugs into the inmates. And so Avon uses his connections to expose the guard that's been bringing the drugs into jail, and he uses that to kind of negotiate some time off of his sentence. Now, unfortunately, the tactic that he used to expose the guards was to actually have the guard unknowingly bring in some tainted drugs. And so several young men that were incarcerated died. And you'll recall from season 1 that Avon Barksdale's nephew, D'Angelo, who was incarcerated right alongside Avon, actually ended up getting locked up on a much longer sentence for something that he truly, truly didn't do. And he took the sentence because he was doing it in service of his family, in service of his family's legacy, in service of, you know, frankly, it was his family saying to him, this is our business, and we have a responsibility to our community and to future generations of our family to keep this business thriving. And they essentially, they put this pressure on D'Angelo to take a 20-year sentence for truly, it wasn't even action that he had actually taken. So when D'Angelo finds out that Avon allowed these young men the other incarcerated people to die, that essentially became the straw that broke the camel's back for D'Angelo. D'Angelo tells Avon, he tells his mom, he said, who's been coming to visit him, you know, he says to all of them, you know what, I don't want any more connection to our family. I don't want any more connection to this drug ring. I'm out. I don't want to benefit from your connections, and I don't want to be the victim of your connections anymore either. I'm just out. I'm free. Now, while this is vexing Avon, it really vexes Stringer Bell, who on the outside, frankly, is really kind of high on his own supply, making all kinds of decisions, okay, without checking in with Avon. And one really big decision that he makes without checking in with Avon is to have D'Angelo killed. And so he actually orchestrates the murder of D'Angelo while incarcerated, and he sets it up so that it looks like it was a suicide. And, you know, and Avon and his family are grieving D'Angelo's death as a suicide. Meanwhile, it was actually a murder by Avon's second in command, Stringer Bell. So back on the outside, Stringer, again, he's had D'Angelo killed. Frankly, he's dating D'Angelo's girlfriend and baby mama. Okay, he's just doing all sorts of things to really kind of make you hate him. We can talk more about that later. But the big thing he did, again, is to begin to partner with Proposition Joe. Again, someone who in this drug marketplace is a competitor for the Barksdale organization. Stringer Bell makes a decision to start to be able to access Proposition Joe's product since his supply chain is gone. He needs the quality of product that Proposition Joe has. And of course, Proposition Joe he's up for it. He'll take a proposition, and he says that's fine, but in order for you to get some of my product, I'm going to need some of your territory. So Stringer Bell does this whole negotiation. So that, of course, leads you to start to wonder, well, who then is Proposition Joe's supplier? What's his supply chain? Well, I'm glad you asked, okay? It is a ginormously kind of rich and well-resourced, you know, Eurocentric group headed up by a man known as the Greek. And we actually find out about the connection between Proposition Joe and the Greek a little later in the season, because we actually meet the Greek and his crime organization a different way. How did we meet them? Well, we spend in season 2 a lot of time on the port, on the docks in Baltimore. We find ourselves on the port because, as a punishment for his shenanigans in season 1, McNulty has been put on the Marine unit, which means literally every morning he is getting up, putting on his policeman uniform and going out to a boat. And, you know, we spend a whole season with McNulty. So we know that he would much rather be in the city doing investigations. And so him being in this Marine unit, monitoring the, you know, literally, you know, water it truly is a punishment for him. And, but as luck would have it, McNulty always getting into something, he ends up finding a body floating in the water. And we eventually find out that that body, that woman, is one of a group of 14 bodies of young women that were being sex trafficked and had been brought to the US in a crate, in a container, by the Greeks organization, larger crime organization. And obviously, in order to pull off an international drug and sex trafficking ring, you'd have to have plenty of connections. And of course, the Greek has those connections. We're talking about connections in customs around the world, connections with the FBI, and of course, connections with the people who work at the docks in Baltimore. And this was a really important and central component of season 2. In the same way that we got to see the impacts of poverty and powerlessness and corruption and drugs and over-policing on a community in season 1, we got to see all of that play out again in season 2, but it was in a different community. It was a community of dock workers, mostly white people. And I will just say that this was really, it was just really unique and amazing. And so I just can't wait for us to really dig in and talk more about this dock life. And what was extremely unfortunate is that the dock workers, they had been watching their livelihoods being stripped away over many years as the Baltimore docks were essentially, they were being gentrified. You know, the docks were being used less and less for shipping and more for luxury housing condos. And so as it started to become a tourist attraction instead of an actual shipping area, we start to see this union of dock workers, these hard-working people, low-income people, we start to see them, they're struggling financially. And the actual leader of that group, the leader of that union, is a man named Sabatka. And he does, out of desperation, he and his union, they begin to turn to crime so that they can have enough money to pay for lobbyists and bribes for politicians so that they could bring honest and legitimate work to the docks. The only way that they could bring the legitimate work to the docks was to generate money through crime. And that is how the dock workers ended up working for the Greek and helping to facilitate the shipping of these mysterious illegal containers, which we come to find out this season sometimes contain people. And because the bodies of the 14 dead girls, and also because, frankly, of some silly police vendettas in the police department, the police were watching the dock workers very closely, and they were able to link some of them to the criminal activity. And they were able to link the deaths of those 14 women that were being sex trafficked to the dock workers. And they were also starting to create links to the Greek and to his larger organization. And in the end, the union leader Sabatka is actually killed by the Greeks when he tries to save his family and his union members from being imprisoned and investigated by the police and the FBI. The Greek is aware, because of his connections, of everything that is happening. He's aware that he's being monitored. He's aware that they're hot on his tail. He cuts his losses and leaves town. And just like at the end of season 1, all efforts by the police, all efforts by the FBI to stop crime, and all efforts by the criminals to thwart the police and FBI, no one was successful. No one was successful. They were not able to stop the criminals were not able to stop the police investigations. The police were not able to stop the criminal activity. And the Greek, who is the head of this major international crime ring, he literally just leaves town. He just leaves. He leaves, and his business goes on. And meanwhile, this union, they have been ripped apart. We have seen generations of a lifestyle, of community built around life on the docks be torn to shred because this community does not have the resources that it needs to be able to continue to bring legitimate work to its community. And so at the end of season 1, you were left with this feeling of like, my goodness, nothing, all of the efforts on both the bad side, whatever that is, and the good side, whoever that is, no one made any progress. You are left with that exact same feeling at the end of season 2, but it is worse because now that helplessness, it extends beyond the city of Baltimore, and you are watching the crime rings become international. And again, nothing can stop them. Nothing can stop them.
Well, I definitely.
Listen,
First of all, it was a great recap. I do want
season
to
2 all over again. That's what that was.
I do want to put a little icing on that cake, because I feel like it's important to point out that the first season started because McNulty raised up some, drama behind nobody investigating the Barksdale organization.
That's right.
Which was the catalyst behind creating the unit that the whole season was about.
Mm-hmm.
The first season being about the illegal drug trade.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's very important that we highlight that the second season was, even though the most interesting parts obviously came from street moments in the season, but the second season was largely about the docks. In fact, It was all about the docks. And the other thing that's interesting is this time, the whole thing started because of a window. And I think it's important to talk about that, because if the first domino that knocked this whole thing over is because it was about Frank Sabaka. The second season was really centered around Frank Sabaka.
Mm-hmm.
And Frank Sabaka, the local church, he had donated a window that showed a stained glass window that showed the dock workers, because that's, it's a Polish church, I believe, and they, that's where they go. And Frank and Valchek, who is part of the police department, he added another window made, and he also, being Polish, wanted to have his window put up instead of Frank Sabaka's. So Valchek had Frank Sabaka got there first. So this whole season started because of that window, because Valchek decided that, well, how did he even have money for the window? How did he have money to donate? And so he
such just an arbitrary, rude.
So it was personal. It was nothing legal.
But it's just so amazing that because of that, he's the one who got the detail put back together, which allowed us to see how everything Janiyah was talking about is connected on a bigger scale. Mm-hmm. Because we saw the street level in the first season, but in the second season, now we get to see what is behind the street level. And I felt like that's the biggest part of this season, is that you see, okay, because of this window, they have an argument. Valchek is in the police, so now he can put a detail on Frank Sabaka. But since they put the detail on Frank Sabaka, now they found out or heard and saw other things that were going on, which expanded the entire investigation, which then wrapped back in the street people that we saw in the first season. But now we get to see everything that's coming from outside of the country through this
the channel of the docks.
Yeah, that channel of the docks.
Mm-hmm.
So
now that wasn't from that first. Make sure you tell them, bro, that wasn't from that first detail that got put together. That first detail was shim sham.
But ultimately that's how the detail. Yeah. But yes, but without getting into the whole painful details, ultimately that's how the detail got back together.
That's right. What was such an important point.
So what I'm saying is, it's just crazy how, if they didn't argue, because Frank Sabaka was doing, like Janiyah said, just enough crime he was just letting things in through the port. That's why he didn't even know about the girls being in there, because he didn't want to know. He just wanted to say, he just let these containers come through for money. So
he truly wasn't using the money for any personal gain.
No personal gain.
100% of the money that he took in through the illegal activity, he was channeling through his union to lobbyists and to bribe politicians to bring legitimate work.
Exactly.
So it was really not a selfish motive in any way.
Yeah. And he was giving that money to his workers when
giving the money to the workers because they were down on their luck. And it's just so interesting because he was so low key. If they never argued about this window,
never,
the whole season wouldn't have happened because everything was just. So I'm just saying.
I don't disagree with you, bro. But I would say that the actual thing that happened that made everything become visible was some rogue activity in the Greeks organization, if you'll recall. Because remember, the only reason we became aware of the women was because they died.
But listen though, before the detail got back on, they had already closed that case with the 14 women. Because remember when they first saw it, when they first got it in, they ruled it as an accident.
That's right.
So if they didn't have the detail come in, and I really hope we told a succinct story. But it's
so hard. It's hard to summarize it all.
But what I'm saying is with this particular point you're talking about, which the 14 women ultimately, just like you explained, died because of they were prostituting them on the way over. And like you said, one didn't want to be a prostitute. She got killed. They killed the rest to cover up so there's no witnesses. But what I'm saying is when they found those bodies, if you remember, they had already written it off because so that part of the investigation wouldn't have gone anywhere.
You're right.
Because it was already the reason why they got back on those bodies was because of the iteration of the detail that we ultimately get to, like Brittany was talking about, which is the real MVPs reassembled. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Daniels and everybody else.
And I can't wait to talk about him.
And that's why we got back to so if we didn't have Valchek putting
with
things
his
in place,
petty vendetta,
then those bodies would have just been written off as an accident because they just said, well, something must have happened the way they killed the 14 girls was they closed the air pipe,
so they
which was
suffocated.
on top of the cane container. So they suffocated. So it's theoretical that something could have, like when they were unloading the container, something could have just hit that pipe and closed it. And that's how they wrote it off at first. But it was the detail that, with McNulty went up there and looked, no, this was a hammer banging on this air pipe.
Well, see, they didn't even know about that air pipe at first.
No, they didn't know about it. They
didn't know. McNulty got up there.
No, but if you watch the season, the lights and stuff were already up there.
Okay.
The crime scene.
They knew about it, but they weren't. Right. They were not concluding that it was manual, intentional intervention.
Exactly. But I will. The part that before we move away from this is that no one wanted to be responsible for the death of these 15 women.
Or being responsible for figuring it out.
Or figuring it out. No one, and you guys, when I say they didn't want to be responsible, I mean they were in meetings with majors and captains and all these other lieutenants and whatever the words that are important in this type of arena, police arena. They were all, no, this is your county. No, this is your county. No, this is they were literally arguing.
No one wanted the accountability.
And you guys, and it wasn't the fact that they didn't want to go through. They didn't want to have to go through the grueling work. They didn't want to mess up their percentages of having these 14 hard cases. And just to think that human life is that unimportant, that these 15 women, regardless of how they got here, their families will never know whatever happened to them because no one cared that they died.
That's right.
They just didn't want to have to deal with it. And I was just like, what is going on? Of course, we can get into a larger conversation about women and stuff like that, but I'm not going to go there because my brother didn't like that. But what I am going to say, just in terms of me going off topic, he doesn't like when I do that. So I'm not going to go off topic.
But you're doing a good job right now. We're wrapping up the recap, and you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
But that part right there, I just wanted to really make sure that we talked about that. That no one wanted to deal with these 15 women.
Such a good point.
And the thing is that's another reason why it would have went away.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody even wanted.
None of the units. I mean, it wasn't just the police. It was just every single type of public authority that could have taken accountability for the case didn't want to. No one wanted to investigate it. Didn't care.
To Anaya's point, there was another container at the end of the show that was a container that they had found out was suspicious. They half-assedly looked into it. And in that very container was the same exact thing. It was women in the back of that container. They went through at the very end of the season, there were still women in that very last container. They were helping them out.
Oh, you mean, okay, well, what they were showing, those women came through they didn't come through the port. You're talking about the end montage.
Yeah.
Yeah, what they were showing there was that even though the port channel was closed for them, that they just have other channels. So those women.
I thought it was that same container that they had looked into that had diapers on the front. That was still the same container.
No, that container.
That one had drugs in it.
That's why they left it. That's why the Greek just said, we'll just cut our losses and leave. So they weren't, that container that you're talking about, when Genia had said at the end, when the Greeks just decided to roll out.
Well, no, yeah, I know. But I from the way I remembered it, which now I'm going to have to go back and watch it. I just remember that being the container that they had looked at earlier and were like, no, this is just whatever. But really, in all actuality, they didn't go far back like the woman did in the beginning of the season.
Oh no,
they go back and look.
That was a different because they actually opened that when the Greeks left, when the Greek left, there was a container on the port that they were trying to get, into the city, and that container, they ultimately opened it up, and remember, they found all the drugs in it, and they put the drugs back in the container, like, hopefully somebody will come and get it. But they knew nobody was going to come and get it because the leaders already left. But they just put the drugs back in to see if somebody would happen to come get it. But at the end, when they did the montage, they were showing that even though, Janai just said it in a great way, even though they shut down this one thing, they still have so many ways to get
it just kept
in.
Going. It just kept going.
So that was a completely different.
That was a completely different port and everything. Because when I saw it, I still had the mindset like nothing's going to stop them. It's going to keep happening. But I did not know that it was a different container.
It was a different container.
Different port. I didn't realize that. I thought it was the same exact container, and they had not looked all the way in the back. And I was like, y'all did not even going to look all the way in the back? No. But okay, so it's different. Listen, I'm going to have to go watch the last episode again and be like,
but I
think you can bear the trauma.
But I think because I think the bigger point of what you're saying is that, look, even though they, ultimately moved past and really solved the murders of the original women, how the trafficking just kept going. Even they still showed with Proposition Joe, they were just basically show how everything, they had to switch it up a little bit, but everything is still
and also, as I'm thinking about it, this is poverty around the world, what it does to people. Poverty around the world will make me put myself into a container, ship myself to a whole nother land I've never been to. I don't speak the language. All I know is that my body is on point, which has actually been crafted by someone, because a lot of those women were getting boob jobs and stuff like that because they had connected to a doctor back in the other country where they were coming from. And then bringing it to America, where Frank Sabaka is just trying to make sure that his port doesn't get closed. Now I'm having dealings with someone named the Greek that won't meet me, and I'm selling drugs, and I don't want to do this, but I'm having to save people who need money. It's just crazy what poverty does around the world.
That's a great starting point.
Well, let's get into it. Let's get into it, because that's where. Well, let me ask you guys this first. This is the first question I want to ask, and then I feel like we can directly get into what Brittany is talking about, because I think that's an important point for us to talk about in this season, because that was one of the major drivers. So, but first of all, let me ask this. This is your first time watching The Wire, and generally people who are big Wire fans, all of them say they don't like season 2. So my question to you before we even get into it is, did you guys like season 2?
Man, you trying to ask about our container this early on, bro?
No, not the. I'm not saying the end overall. Yeah,
I get what you're saying. I'll tell you my reaction, bro. If The Wire, as a 5-season epic journey, had started on the docks, I would have been less inclined to sign up for season 2. I'm going to put it to you like that. So my investment in season 2 was because of how amazing season 1 was.
Gotcha.
Season 1 had the writing, the actors,
gotcha,
the way that the way that it just so beautifully encapsulated like the realities and complexities of life and poverty and the struggle for power and autonomy and the way that it showed corruption, but it took it out of this very elusive, kind of hard to understand atmosphere and brought it down to, this is how corruption plays out in real life on the streets. That was so well done in season 1 that season 2, I had a level of buy-in before the season even started. But I'm going to tell you, season 2 would not have been as engaging a launching point for me for this saga. And it is not that I am not as, empathetic to this kind of poverty in the way that it was showing. It was just because, maybe it's just because I relate less personally to life on the docks. Maybe it's because, like, when I see street level crime in Black communities, it is something that I have seen, that I understand, and that is more familiar to me. I don't know, but I felt less personally connected to season 2. And so, bro, I don't know if I would have been along for the ride if they had started the Wire saga on the docks. But that said, I mean, I still took a ton away from season 2. Like, I was so engaged in season 2 that I wouldn't have been as engaged if it had been the first. If it was the first season, gotcha. I don't think so.
Okay. I can see that. I enjoyed season 2. There was people like, oh, it's gonna be more white people or something like that, and I didn't really understand what people were talking about when I was watching it. I was like, I just really thought it was a different perspective of the same
city. Yep.
You know what I mean? Just a different part of the city. And so I guess because I watch so many things, I try to have a different perspective when I'm walking into something, especially if I've been warned about it. So, bro, you told us how season 1 is like the streets and season 2 is like the docks. And then we're going to get into politics and education and one other thing I can think of, the last one. But and so media. So I'm looking forward. I guess in my mind, I was like, oh, okay, cool. We're about to see. It's almost like watching the same, like those movies that will show you the same scene over, but with just
from
a
a different perspective.
of this scene. And so I was thinking to myself, all snap, how are we going to find out this different perspective of the Barksdale organization for the docs, and then just seeing how all of that played out. So I enjoyed it. And sometimes I feel bad when people are like, oh my God, it was like how, we talked about Star Wars, no one liked the little fur bears. I was like, maybe Ewoks. This is how the Ewoks. Thank you.
See,
no one likes
bears,
Ewoks.
Fur bears, you lost credibility immediately in your sentence.
Listen.
I have a question. Please stop saying fur bears.
But that sense would be good. I thought that it would just be Brittany. You're about to be different again, where you're enjoying something that no one else enjoys. And I was like,
is it fur bears all over again?
Is it fur bears all over again? So
I would love for us to talk a little bit more. We've already started to introduce his story, the story of Sabaka. Okay, the head of this union, because, all right, last season we learned about the Barksdales, right? And this was a family we understood that had been, they started from the bottom, and they had been, as a family history, a drug family, a drug organization. And now this was just such interesting insight. The Sabatka family, they had been for generations members of unions that had been organizing and having leadership roles for people who were doing this kind of blue collar activity. Okay. And, and it was just the way that they had pride in their union, and the way that they have pride in community and pride in family. It was the exact same song that we heard sung in the first season of, this is bigger than us. This is bigger than me. We have a legacy that we have to champion here. And there are people that are relying on us. I just thought that was such an interesting set of parallels. So go ahead, bro.
No, I'm just saying, I love that about this season, because here's the thing, which this piggybacks directly off of what Brittany was just talking about. Because Frank Sabaka is one of the most noble people in the sense of his intention.
I agree.
What he's working to do. Okay, because we generally said he's looking to bring more work in, but specifically his goal was to get the canal dredged, which meant that it would be deeper so that they could get more ships into the dock for people to work. So everything he was doing was trying to get this one particular thing done. But because of his level of integrity, he actually went so far the other way with what actually happened. Because, look, drugs, it's all bad. But I feel like human trafficking is a special kind of bad. Like when you think about, they shipped people like they were a commodity. And even when they found out they were dead, the first thing the Greeks said was, what's that? 250,000 a year for the next 4, and like he worked out the math of
his products.
How much money
he lost some products.
Not even anything about that these girls were dead. It was his money.
And the thing is that when you see those, it's just such a great illustration of how people with good intentions can end up in the worst places. Because he didn't ask, because he didn't know that there was girls in there, but he didn't ask. He didn't know what, So seeing that side of it and how it plays out pretty much the same way, because with him trying to do all he could do to get this extra work coming in, you see the I forget which one of you said this, but you see the how all of them are being pushed into poverty on these docks. So when they're pushed into poverty, a lot of them resort to the same things, because another part of Frank Sabaka's family, who, I mean, we didn't even get into this, but he has a son, Ziggy, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. And
oh gosh, my head immediately started to hurt. My head immediately started to hurt.
But I wanted to talk about his nephew, who you see the similarities of the personality types in both of these poverty-stricken situations, because you got people like Mickey, who is Frank Sabaka's son, nephew. So Frank Sabaka has a son named Ziggy and a nephew named Nick, and they grew up together, right? So Mickey is the smarter of the two. So he's not lazy, he's ready to work, but there's just no work. And so he ends up ultimately selling drugs, just like people on in the first season in the Black projects. It's like
there's no other options. There's no other options. Listen, it was literally, I mean, we watched, and it was the exact same thing we talked about with season 1. With season 1, we were watching people with so much potential to be successful in whatever way they were deployed in life.
Right.
But the options that they had available were not options that were going to get them anywhere except. So we were watching Nikki. Let me just say, if Nikki had been in our family, Nikki would have gone to college. Nikki would have gone to graduate school. Nikki probably would be like a head of a Fortune 500 company. Who knows? Because Nikki, but the options that he had available, his most as resourceful as he could be, was to start to do illegal activities to try to keep his family afloat. It was literally his best option. Just wanting to work his 9 to 5 was a losing proposition. It was a losing proposition. So anyway, we saw that in season 1, and we saw it again here. It was truly just a lack of power, lack of access, lack of opportunity. And then that really just makes you basically primed to be victimized by systems. And that's what ended up happening.
Over
and
over.
So what about Ziggy?
Let me start off. Okay, let me start off here. If anybody needed their ass whooped, Ziggy needed to be put over my lap with my belt, and I just wanted.
The worst.
Here's the thing. This is where you get into the nuance of characters. Ziggy was a result of his surroundings. Ziggy's father, who was Frank Sabaka, was not being a father to Ziggy.
He was worried about
Frank Sabaka was so worried about dredging up the canal.
He was under pressure.
And getting that union together that he did not pay attention to Ziggy. I do believe that Frank Sabaka put Ziggy off onto his cousin Nikki, because when Ziggy did end up murdering one man and injuring another young man, he said to Nikki, "Where were you? You're his cousin." And Nikki said to him, "You're his father. Don't." So there is this dynamic that you finally, and for Frank, it clicks. Like, I've been caring about the wrong thing, and now my son is an alcoholic. He bought a pet duck for attention. He is the smallest, scrawniest thing out on these docks. They pick on him all the time. He is down all the time. He's always the victim. He has this sense of wanting to do and be more important and do more, but because Ziggy has not been taught how to be a leader, to be more, to do more. Ziggy is not good at anything. He's not good at anything but running his mouth. And so you see in the end, Ziggy is depressed. Ziggy is depressed and he ends up doing the murders, as I stated, and he goes to jail. And Ziggy is not in any kind of jail, okay? Ziggy, with his little scrawny self, is in this jail with these big, actually bad people that are like
quote unquote bad people.
Quote unquote bad people, right? Who are actually probably from other devastated situations if we got into their stories. But he is in this situation, and Ziggy, you've never been raised how your actions would allow you to be placed. And so while Ziggy frustrated me the whole season, being friends with Black people and then using the N-word when they weren't around, being undisciplined, not just going along with the plan like he's supposed to, just messing things up. I
being
also
disrespectful.
see that being disrespectful. I also noticed that Ziggy is a product of also having a mother who was, I believe she was either on drugs or was an alcoholic. So neither of his parents were truly in his life. So this doesn't excuse him for becoming the type of person that he was. But what I am saying is that I felt a little bit bad for him when I started learning more about his story. He was still needed some help. He still needed to be told off, slapped, and all those different things. But yeah,
that's how I felt about him. My experience of Nicky. I mean, of course, he was super annoying because he befuddled everything. Okay, he befuddled.
You talk about Ziggy, right?
Of Ziggy, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I was annoyed by Ziggy, of course, because he was an annoying person. But more than that, I thought it was. So we know that people who have less income have less access to things like mental health support. Yep. And I just pitied Nicky. I pitied him the whole time because Ziggy, I'm sorry. I pitied Ziggy the entire time because he clearly needed mental health support. And there were a ton of things.
A long time ago.
Yeah. We learned, as Brittany said, it was, if we just compare Ziggy Zabaka's son to Nicky Zabaka's nephew, we know that Ziggy came from a broken home. I hate that phrase, but a broken home. Nicky's parents were together. We know that Frank Zabaka was not paying attention to Ziggy because he was trying to hold down the whole union and the whole community. And we know that Nicky's father had actually started to sacrifice himself less for the larger union. And he had made an intentional step during Nicky's formative years to step back from union leadership, et cetera, to be more invested in his family. And so we see that from a nurturing standpoint, they had very different experiences. But I think the real difference between Ziggy and Nicky was that, I think Ziggy was legitimately unbalanced. Yeah. And I think he needed mental health support. And that is just another thing that plays out in low-income communities. Well, you start to say he's the silly guy that brought a duck into the bar, but really what you need to be saying is that guy brought a duck into the bar. He needed help, I guess,
with
is what
a diamond necklace on the duck.
Totally.
Diamond necklace.
We call people eccentric who actually need mental health support, is what I'm saying.
That, it's so interesting that I've watched, this is the probably the fourth or fifth time I've watched The Wire. And that I've never thought about Ziggy in that way. And that's very, very interesting. Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting. I think it might even been intentional because he is somebody he was either bipolar or something. Excuse me. He had something diagnosable.
Totally. And, he was legitimately depressed, I think. I mean, he needed help. He needed support. There was no amount of a father paying attention to him that I think would have been enough.
But the father paying attention may, number one, have noticed it, but number two, even in this situation where we're talking about, wouldn't matter because, what could they have done? Mm-hmm. But do you guys got notes? Because I'm gonna tell you, watching your text both of you while you were going through the season. I'm very much looking forward to if you got little notes and stuff you want to talk about.
Well, I think that we do need to talk a lot about, get back into how the team got together. They got back together because it was almost as if you were watching the Avengers be called to come together. Like there was a bat signal or something, and like they were all coming together. Valchek's son-in-law was the one we know from last season. I don't know his name on the show, the son-in-law's name, but he was part of.
It starts with a P.
Him.
Przybylewski.
Thank you.
Przybylewski.
Mm-hmm.
Przybylewski was put over this shim-sham detail that was created to capture Frank Sabaka. And when we say shim-sham,
he wasn't put over it. He wasn't put over it. Remember the guy who was watching TV? He was the one who was running it. Because Presbo came up to him and was asking him basically like, "Do you want me to do something?" And he was like, "Oh." He was like, "I don't know."
Why am I not remembering certain parts of this Moose show like this? Because I remember them saying he was like at dinner, like Przybylewski, "No, you're going to do this. You're going to be over this. Then you're about to be on this. Then you're about to be this, and then you're about to do that."
I thought Przybylewski was the head of the original.
No, he was not.
Okay.
The guy who was in charge of, he's so irrelevant that we don't remember his name. But if you can remember this scene, because, Presbo wanted to get back in. Okay, let's recap this one part. What Brittany is talking about is after the window incident and when Frank Sabaka, refused to let his window get replaced or whatever.
Right. They know that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So when Valchek put the detail together to investigate Sabaka, the first detail that got put together was a detail of just not good cops. These were.
Did you just repeat everything I just said?
No, I'm recapping it so it all goes together. You know what I'm saying? So when that happened, one of the people that Valchek got was supposed to be a good leader from another department, but he wasn't really. And that was the one who was running it. And Przybylewski was supposed to be doing the same thing he was doing with this new detail, but he couldn't do it because when he was talking to the guy, like, "What do you want me to do?" he wouldn't give him any direction. And that was also another interesting political part of the season, because the reason why Valchek got this
horrible detail.
Yeah, this horrible detail was because the Burrell, who's the what do you call it? The head.
Listen, all those titles confuse me. Is it commissioner?
Commissioner. Yeah. So Burrell was basically trying to act like, yeah, I'm listening, but he knew Valchek was on some BS, so he just gave him a detail to say he gave him a detail. And after that, when Valchek realized what was going on, that's when he went back to Burrell to get, like Brittany said, the Avengers put back together. Like, look, no, I want Daniels, I want, his whole crew, because they get results. You know what I mean? And I want results on this dude, Sabaka. But yeah, man, but I'll say that seeing them to get together, that I feel like that was a good description, because it was a feeling of seeing like superheroes get back together or whatever.
Because they so strategically dispersed them into so many different arenas at the end of season 1. So it was like, well, what is season 2 about to look like? they're all in different parts. They had Daniels in the, what was it?
Evidence
the
locker.
supply or the evidence locker. I was like, this is someone who's can take the bar right now. Like,
that's right.
Is he in the evidence locker?
Yeah, he's
like,
in the evidence locker. Kima was on a desk.
On a desk,
knowing
that she was itching to beat somebody
on the
up.
water. Yeah.
Well, so I think. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, sis. I was going to segue. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So, but just to see each one of them come back together.
Yeah,
that was fun.
Looking how none of them have changed. Like Presbeluski was ready to be told what to do. I can do it. Let me do it. Then you got the two little road cops. I don't know how these two keep coming back in here. Them two get on my last nerve. They are so they're upset because I don't think they're taking it seriously. But you're even lucky that you're let back in this because Daniels know you two stole the last time that you two were together. You're keeping things. You're keeping money. So you watch them two in some ways almost even mess up this investigation.
Herc and Ellis.
You watch them arguing over something and they're not paying attention to watching where the Greeks take the containers. And there's a key person leaving the scene in a car. And I was just like, are you serious right now? Like, I just wanted, if anything, if there was a ranking of people I wanted to give a good whooping to, those two were first on the list, and then was Ziggy.
Because that was so realistic, though. It's so realistic because I feel like every team has a couple people that are a whack attack. I just feel like.
But you know what's so interesting about those two is that in this Carver, not Carver, it's Herc and Carver.
Carver? Okay.
Hercules.
I don't even think it was Ellis, but
Tim and Bob.
But it's Herc and Carver.
His name is Ellis Carver.
I don't remember his first name. So yeah, so Ellis Carver. Okay, but
Herc and Carver.
Yeah, Herc and Carver. But what's crazy about it is
I don't know.
They also want to act offended when people treat them like they're not on point. It just
makes me so mad.
And that's so real life.
Stupid. It's so real life.
It's so real life. Like if you've ever worked in an office.
Anywhere.
Yeah. If you ever worked in an office situation or anywhere, like you said, there are always people who want to play the victim. And it's like, but actually, yeah, you were arguing over French fries and Sparrows drove right out in front of you and you didn't even see.
Yeah. You missed that whole thing.
Who is the number
crazy.
2? And Spiros is the number 2 in this.
In the Greek organization.
Yeah, and they missed them arguing over French fries.
Y'all, I just wanted to go through the television so bad and slap them both.
Yeah,
but I couldn't.
Yeah, and you know what? And it's actually, as you two were both, as we were just talking about Herc and Carver, I started to realize that we don't really have a ton of insight into their lives outside of them pretty much being screw-ups in the police force, right? Yeah. We don't really have much insight into them. So, you know, another topic, bro, you were talking about, what do we have in our notes? One of the things
because if you don't start giving me your notes, I'm gonna give you mine. And I've been dying to hear y'all's notes.
I'm just like, I feel like we've been talking about notes this whole time.
No. But I'm saying I want to hear about, I guess your texts were so entertaining to me this time.
Well, listen, I can get into them texts. Let's go.
And I'm just saying I was interested to hear your notes from the things that made those texts.
Okay.
You know,
continue. Go ahead, sis. I'll go.
And you know, one of the things that, and again, this is why this show is just so good. You know, one of the things that I think they do such a good job of doing is kind of showing the impact of these professional choices on the personal lives of people, and the way that their personal lives are impacting their professional choices and that interplay. Because guess what? That's real life. You
Oh
know,
my
and
gosh.
so as we were watching the Avengers come back together,
Right.
so if you just kind of run down the list. So think about like Daniels, for example.
Yes.
Daniels, number one.
Which, wait a minute. We got a chance to see Daniels with no shirt on. And I was like, okay, Daniels.
Okay, crunch. Okay,
somebody
crunch.
been in the gym. You was in the gym while you was in that evidence locker. You was in the gym.
Yeah.
Daniels. I said, okay, how is he sleeping in a separate room right now? Hold on.
Oh my God. You just got ahead of
Yeah,
Janai. But I was surprised.
That
I was expecting y'all to say
fool ya.
something about that. I was expecting y'all to say something about that.
Well, it had to
And
be
you
said.
didn't text it.
It had to, because I was shocked. I couldn't text. I lost my focus. You know, but I said that's exactly.
But talk about it, Janai. Talk about how they got there.
So, yeah. So
let's focus on wellness.
Yeah. And so Daniels, you know, he found himself in the evidence locker again. There was so much punishment that had been doled out to the Avengers because of the fact that they were doing genuine and real police work in season 1.
And they started following the money.
And they started following the money.
You don't follow the money. Don't you do it.
Don't you do it. And the powers that be said, oh, you want to investigate? You can go investigate. Daniels, go investigate the crevices in the evidence locker.
Evidence basement.
And let me just make a quick tangent about the evidence locker real quick. I know we're not on that right now, but the conditions. You know,
horrible.
I mean, there's so much that we saw in both season 1 and season 2 about the antiquated nature of the way that the police work is being done. We're talking about typewriters in 2002 and 2003. Why are you still using a typewriter? Number one, they're using these awful forms. The evidence locker, it is a mess. Things are in bags and it's not logged incorrectly. It is just so disorganized. And the fact that we are looking to these systems to be the places where justice is like held and facilitated, and they are awful from a systems perspective. And that's, I love that the show let us see that. Let us see how antiquated the systems and the infrastructure. I mean, frankly, they were keeping the tally of the cases. The case assignments were on a whiteboard on the wall. I mean, really? You're literally making
Jane Doe 1, 2, 3, 4.
I mean, I could have walked by with my elbow and changed the official record because the official record was living on a white. Anyway, it was just the systems were awful. But anyway, so what I was going to say was Daniels, because of this demotion that he had experienced, he and his wife had been having some serious conversations, and his wife was saying to him, listen, you are not set up for success. And she was saying to him, you're not thriving in this department. They're not going to let you win. And so you've been to law school, and it's time for us to now wrap this season of your journey. Okay. And you need to move on. And so they had made a decision, and based again, wanting to have personal progression and safety in his life and in his, and to have some sense of professional actualization. He had made the choice with his wife. He had made the decision to go to law school and go be a lawyer. He was gonna leave the police force. And in fact, he had 20 years already. He was putting in his paperwork, and he was heading on out. 22 years. He was heading on out when he got essentially this opportunity to be a part of this vendetta detail that Valchek was putting together to investigate Sabaka. And so we got to see how his decision to continue to work with the police force, how that impacted his personal life. And frankly, it created a ton of strain between him and his wife. And it was the same thing for Kima.
Well, before we get off of Daniels and his wife, this was an interesting dynamic for me because you all know how I am, and I understand Daniels wanting to be.
We don't know how you are. Explain.
Well, you know, Brittany, I'm going to deal with a lot of your attitude that you're having today off camera, because I'm trying to remain professional, and you know, you're stretching, but I'm going to stick to it. But what I'm saying is that, like, at first glance, when you look at it, especially from like a male perspective or whatever, you're like, you know, he doesn't want to be in an office. He wants to be, you know, out doing his thing. He wants to be fighting the dirty crime. But I'm gonna tell you what, man, like when you hear their conversations though, and I felt like it was so great how they did it, because we didn't see their whole marriage, but I got a feel for their marriage based on how they did the conversations. And the way their conversations is that, because what she said was, I forget what he said, he loves how she always tells him the right thing to do or something like that. But she said, I fell in love with you because of your ambition. And which gives you a picture of when they started this marriage, they seemed like they had a plan. You know what I mean? Which was not you being in the streets 22 years from now. You know, like that wasn't part of the plan. And it's like, even though I respect Daniels for ultimately knowing himself and doing, you know, what he felt like he had to do, I get what she's saying too, man, because like, we said, you know, I could see making a plan with somebody and like, you know, you're going way off the plan, buddy. You are going way off the plan. And as a matter of fact, I tolerated not being on plan for decades. So now you said we were back on the same page, and now you're doing the literal exact opposite of what we talked about. So it was another one of those situations that the wire.
That's why you
so
got to
much,
sleep on a twin mattress.
which I could see. I think it was a day bed. It didn't even look like a twin.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was bad.
Really?
That's why
It was
you
a
was
bad
in that
situation.
little baby room
Yeah, it was a
with that
bad
television.
It looked like he had to sleep with his knees up like a little bit.
Yeah, but you know, it was one of those things where, you know, we talked about this about when we recapped last season. Daniels, he had always been prioritizing progression. And so the way that he was making decisions in season 1, it was because he was making decisions to move up the chain in the police force. And so even his decision to not leave and to take the detail in season 2 was because he was promised positioning for progression. And he was smart enough to get that promise clearly made before he signed back up to go back into that journey. And so it
sounds like you're a little more on his side.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is the wife just wanted him to be set up for success. And he was in a situation where he was beating his head against the wall in that police force. And I could just see the wife saying, listen, you know, if there's no path to progression here, then you are being a hypocrite, because I know that you're a person that wants, right. I know that you are a person that's committed to progression, and you're not going to be able to get the progression you want. And so when he took the detail with the guarantee of progression, I understood the wife as being skeptical, because there was nothing in recent history in his experience that would have given her a reason to believe that the trajectory that he had early on would continue. He had been making positive progress for 22 years until he met McNulty in the crew, right? Like until he got on the bad foot, he was making positive progress. And so she just felt like, listen, we have rode this horse as long as we can. It's time to get on the next horse so we can keep moving. You know, because you could just tell that whatever her professional grind is, she's on it. You know, she's making progression. And so she's just saying, you need to hold up your end of the deal. So I felt like I don't even like to think about it as sides, but I think that he had belief in the deal that he had brokered.
But she was justified in not believing.
Totally.
Gotcha.
Totally, because he had just been put on the piss list, and they were getting a sense of what happens when you're on the piss list with these folks. And so I
agree with you.
I saw both sides of it. I will just tell you my personal feeling though is that their marriage, to me, it seemed like the most real friendship and marriage that we saw. You know, it just, to me, this looked like two people that had known each other for decades, you know, and they had a plan, you know, and because they had a level of realness in their conversations that, to me, I think that lady should have won some awards. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it was
their dynamic. It was just so real.
It was so authentic. That dynamic
That's the word.
between the two
it
of
was
them.
so authentic.
Now, this goes perfectly into what you were talking, and it was interesting because you were about to talk about Kima.
Yep.
And what the way they did, and they very rarely do these kind of camera tricks, but it was so, that scene where they superimposed Daniel's talking to his wife over Kima talking to her wife. They were both talking to their spouses about getting back in the streets, basically, in this detail. But the thing with Kima and her wife, though, I don't have as much sympathy for Kima's wife, because I feel like their relationship was pretty young based on how they showed it. And Kima was who she was when they started.
Yeah.
And that I don't like. I don't like when I show you who I am.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you can't get mad when you're trying to change me. Especially, like, I'm trying to change. I'm sitting at the desk, but I'm miserable. I am miserable.
But that's why Kima, in my opinion, was just as wrong. Because for you to pretend that you could be someone other than who you are to try to keep your relationship, you're not setting yourself up for success, and you're certainly not setting your relationship up for success. I can agree with that. I was mad at Kima's wife for trying to box her in, trying to box Kima into this lifestyle that clearly was foreign to Kima and was not going to be a good fit. Kima at a desk, I don't think so. But at the same time, Kima accepted those terms, you know? And so it's like they both were wrong. I think they both were wrong. Kima knew, I agree. There's no way she could have sustained that.
I agree. I just have.
I was trying to remember Brittany's text about Kima. And, you know.
I was trying to go through the texts for Brittany.
Kima not being
there
enthused.
Are so, like.
Because Brittany is not.
She's Brittany not happy about this baby.
That was when Brittany's texts were back. Brittany's texts were about Kima. It was a couple of things. It was Kima not being really excited about trying to even be on this desk life as a police officer, but also she wasn't really taking well to the prospect of being a parent.
I think when I think about Kima as well, and her wife's dynamic, I just think about the fact that she literally saw Kima in the hospital. Are you alive right now? Almost dead. I am about to lose my best friend, the love of my life, and now you're telling me that you're about to go back out here and I have a child in my stomach? I'm very confused and I'm very concerned. But on the other part of that, as Janiyah was saying,
that was her job.
Right. But the other part of that is, I think sometimes we look at people like Kima's wife and we can quickly say, you're trying to change them. Because I feel like Kima's wife is very intelligent, I believe she herself voiced what she wanted the future to look like. And Kima, on some part, agreed to that at some point.
Well, yeah.
And the wife was like, okay, so we at that point now. But I'm gonna need you to. And also, Kima was in school, so apparently Kima was looking to do something else that was not what she's currently doing. That's the other part of it.
I definitely see what both of y'all are saying, and I think that their relationship rings true as well.
Yeah.
From this perspective, because Kima even though, like, we're not talking about kids here. Both of these people seem like they, are 30s, you think, around there? Like early 30s. And what I'm saying is there's a point when you have to learn that I'm not going to be able to, get this person. I'm not going to be able to change this person. But the thing is that even if you are trying to, that person might want to go along with the plan because in their head, on paper, it makes sense.
Yep.
But when you are an adult, you got to start recognizing that, look, I know you might think on paper this makes sense, but the reality is when you came conscious, your only regret was you didn't put enough tape on the gun. That was your regret.
Yeah.
Before you said anything else. So it's like, and that was before she was pregnant. So it's like,
this is who she is.
In that situation, I mean, even if I'm just saying, like, I feel like in the beginning of Daniels and his wife, that they were both completely on the same page.
Yeah.
Like I don't even think it was Daniel was fronting, but I think in the beginning of Kima and her wife's relationship, Kima was who she was, but she was also agreeing to this plan. But I think anybody with any level of perception could have realized that Kima is not no house cat. Like, everybody knows. Like, anybody who talks about it.
But the other part, but one thing I do want to say about Daniels and his wife is that so ambition, when you're marrying someone who is ambitious, even if they had a plan at the beginning, you're marrying someone who is looking for the next thing that is going to get them quickly to where they want to be. And so even if they had a plan that this is what we're going to do, I'm thinking of, you can't be too thrown off that Daniels has created and set his own terms. So in his mind, he's going to be able to get to a place that he wants to be in power. Well, and he's going to get here quicker than maybe taking the bar. And it's going to be more enjoyable to me than being someone's lawyer.
But she gave him 22 years.
But he was making progress for 22 years.
Right. He was making progress. He hit a ceiling.
That path had been paying off. He had just started to be set up for failure. You have to remember,
listen.
He was on the
because he's a lieutenant.
Totally, he's on his path until he got linked up with McNulty and crew.
To where he had to use his integrity.
Lieutenant just doesn't feel like.
I mean, I don't know what that means. I know he doesn't have one of his police clothes.
No,
I know that. He
was moving through the ranks.
Yeah, he's talking to Rawls about decisions.
I know,
Rawls
to be a
was
lieutenant after 22 years. It's messy. Just like we're having this conversation right now, it's messy. But I'm just saying. But
I think that that's also bringing in that topic of marriage. Like, I think that that's part of marriage. Like, who you're marrying is not who you are married to 10 years later. Like, it's a very people change,
sis.
It's like,
but
who she married 22, but do they, or do you now do parts of who they really are really become concrete and actualize? Because this is something we should never marry people for potential. So if you guys had a plan, that's still a potential plan. That's not actually what's happening. So
and Britt, you just segued right to McNulty and his wife. Because this is a relationship.
A hot mess. Okay. I just had to say that out loud.
But I mean, you have Kima and her wife, where we have Kima and her wife. They are both in some form of denial about who Kima is as a person, right? And then
we
see
so much denial.
I think you just summarized the last 7 minutes.
So much denial.
With one sentence.
And then we see McNulty and his wife, and you can tell that they had a period of time where perhaps they were in some shared denial, but that wife, oh, she's over it. She's done. She has now said, McNulty, I see you for who you are. And it's so funny because we watch him for about 10 to 15 minutes go into a level of denial about who he is. He says to himself, I'm turned over a new leaf. He's like, that's my last night of binge drinking. Again. I'm no longer a binge drinker and a womanizer as of today because I declare it to be so. I am ready to get back to my wife and my kids. And that wife is like, no, sir, I know you very well. You are who you are. And I think it's so interesting because interesting. He was who he was. And we all know that it's so easy to be delusional and to believe for a few minutes that you're someone else.
Well, most people have who they think they are. Woof. And who they are, but most times that is not the same thing. Like most people, very few people are in touch with who they actually are, which sabotages any relationship you're in right from the beginning because you don't know who you are.
You don't know who you are.
And it takes work to get there.
Y'all, can I tell you something? I wish that I just had a thought that I wish I had thought of in advance because I would have made a PowerPoint slide. Because I feel like, and I want to let you all know that I contemplated doing it right now, real quick, but I said, you know what? Let me not do that because I wouldn't have been subject to mockery. But what I just realized is that we had a chance to see a relationship continuum play out in this show. So I was just thinking about Nikki and his girlfriend, right? Mm-hmm. So Nikki and his girlfriend, they were at that point in the beginning of the relationship. They have a child, and Nikki's girlfriend, what is she doing? She's sitting there seeing all of the potential in their future, right? And wow, Nikki,
that's so true.
Nikki he's feeling the pressure because he also sees the potential. Right. And so
he wants so bad to do right. And
he wants so badly. Baby. All he wants to do. And it's so funny because their dreams are not caviar. Their dreams are like a townhouse. They're like, right. We just want to get a townhouse and like have a steady income and like be together and give our daughter positive life outcomes. Like that's all they want. It's like
that's it. Can I jump off of you real quick?
Please.
Because that part put in a whole another aspect of Baltimore, which is crazy, that they showed, because I got to witness this happening as a loan officer. But that house that they were looking at, Nikki and his girlfriend, Frank Sabarka's nephew and his girlfriend, were looking at a house that used to be one of their families.
His grandma's house.
It was grandma. That's it. I was thinking.
It was his grandma's house.
Okay, so his grandma's house, and it probably cost $35,000 when she bought it. And the thing about it is, sisters, that is exactly how it is in Baltimore. They will put some new hardwood floors in these small row houses, and they will charge $350,000 for them. And just think about, it just plays in so well with what you were talking about. Like, their perspective is, okay, I want this house, and it's somebody in my family owned it. So obviously we'll be able to own it because, it's the same house. It was only 4 years ago it got sold. So it can't be that. But if you think when they went to go look at that house and they saw the price, you just saw how that pressure of the expectation that Janelle is talking about elevated a couple of notches right then. Because it's like, getting this house is not going to be nearly as simple as I thought about, which pushes us down some paths where maybe 10 years from now we'll be having the same conversations.
And it was so interesting to watch gentrification, because when you just think of gentrification, you just think of it as white people impacting people of color.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But what it really is it's really about economics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's
so
high
this was
income versus low income.
There you go. And
Yeah.
it was so funny how in that exchange, even the name of the neighborhood had changed. Do y'all remember that?
Yep.
The name of the neighborhood had changed.
But it was just changed because they said it was changed.
Exactly.
Like it was nothing that happened. They were just like, yeah, this is what it's called now. Like, and he's like, what?
Yeah. Here we have a neighborhood here in Pittsburgh that was always been East Liberty. Now people are just really calling it the East Side.
All right, here we go.
Since when? But
I'm gonna tell you,
that happened.
We could do a whole podcast on that because Pittsburgh
on gentrification.
Oh my God, my neighborhood I live in. Okay, all right.
We're not even gonna get it.
Okay, you're right. You're right.
We're gonna stay on topic.
Okay.
Gentrification, the podcast coming soon.
Gentrification in your neighborhood. All right. Here's a couple things I want to hear about. What did y'all think about Bodie not knowing how radio stations work?
Who's Bodie?
Bodie Broadus.
Which one?
Light skin, the light skin drug dealer on Stringer's. You were texting me about him when Stringer was testing him, and he said that.
Oh, the little young one. Yes, y'all see. I don't know characters' names. I know very few. I described them, but as soon as you said the little lights going, I was like, I know who you're talking about.
But Brittany, my sister has some Brittany, I'm talking about, has some very separate sides of her personality. One of these sides that we talk about is the extremely loving side, which we see most often. Now, I know the other sides because I'm not going to bring them up, but I know them because I'm your brother. But anyway. But it was so funny because at one point, Stringer Bell, who we all know who he is, he was giving Bodie, he sent Bodie and, some people on a drug run. And one of the things they had to do was write down the mileage of where they were supposed to go so that Stringer could line it up and say, look, you went exactly where you were supposed to go. And what happened is when they got back, long story short, they couldn't find the drugs. And when they got back, Stringer was going over the mileage, and Bodie was 3/4 of a mile off.
Bro,
and Brittany was like, "Oh, Stringer, don't be so hard on him. It's only 3/4."
Y'all, I was like, if he gets in trouble because of this 3/4 of a mile, all of us would be so
you know what? I think we should screen print some of Brittany's things to share because they're just so good.
We are going to start doing that going forward.
But I wanted to show you why I did just go ahead and make the PowerPoint really quickly.
God.
I had to do it. I just did it really quick. So because
you guys, you are
I just wanted to show.
You're literally getting an autistic look into the three of us.
Okay, go ahead and explain it. Break it down.
Bro, your green screen is messing up, bro.
Oh, hold on. I think you're not messing up.
You're starting to look like Baltimore.
Oh, did I mess it up with my screen share?
Okay, he'll go back.
There it is. So the point I was making was
it's still up.
The point I was making was
the screen share is still up.
I know. I'm describing it now. Yeah.
Break it down for
Nikki. Yeah. So Nikki and his girlfriend, they're really at the beginning of this relationship life cycle, right? And this is where they're full of hope. They're full of potential. And right now they're in this dreaming phase. And you know that Daniels and McNulty had that phase with their wives, right? Like we know that, right? This is how it starts. It starts with the dreaming and the belief, okay? And then you get to the place where Kima and her wife are, where it's like, listen, we're at a pivotal decision-making point right now. We've got a child on the way, and we could choose denial, okay? Or we can choose reality, okay? And own who we are, okay? I feel like Daniels and his wife have taken the reality path. I feel like to this point, they have been saying, you know what? We can make this work if we hold each other accountable. And I think because they have both been open to that accountability and to that truth, that they can make it. They can be successful, because I feel like they're checking each other. They're checking each other. I mean, we're watching a one-sided conversation where right now we're watching them examine Daniel's professional decisions. But I believe, based on the nature of their relationship, that if the wife ever strayed from their course, they'd be having the same set of conversations. And I think there's another path, and that is the path where McNulty and his wife went, right? And that is where, when that time came for the decision making about whether they were going to live in their truth or not, they couldn't get on the same page. They couldn't hold each other accountable to the commitments that they had made to each other. And so we have a disconnect with McNulty and his wife, where she has made her way to the reality of the situation. McNulty remains in denial, but at the end of the day, they are not on the same page
at all. And
I have so much more I could say.
If anybody, these are one of those points. If you want to know what it's like growing up with Janiyah, she is the
people
one
like a PowerPoint.
She's the one who would create a PowerPoint in the middle.
I tried so hard not to do it.
You saw her try not to do the PowerPoint. But
she wasn't walking in her truth.
Do you see?
If we look at Janiyah's
that's like Kima's wife. Yeah. Kima's wife trying to put her on the desk. I need a PowerPoint. I need a slide. And the
sad thing is, it made your point even more relevant. That makes your PowerPoint even more relevant. You had to live in your own truth. There was no way you were not.
It was going to happen now. It was going to happen later. Somebody was going to see that slide.
But we were going to get a text about that slide later.
But listen.
You 100% were. So.
Look, but the point I wanted to make before I don't know how we got off on this tangent, but I wanted to point out. I know you're very tangential, but listen, I thought it was such a great, subtle thing they did when Bodie was on. They were traveling to Philly to pick up drugs, and Bodie, who is a Baltimore, he's a Baltimore drug dealer who he grew up in.
Never been outside of the city limits.
And when you think about, man, how that doesn't even register to most people, that he doesn't understand why his Baltimore radio stations aren't working when he's driving up to Philly. And I felt like that was one of those subtle things, but the first time I saw it, I was like, man, that just, you could talk for hours. Absolutely. Starting off at that point of just how small their world is. Mm-hmm. It's not even just Baltimore, it's their side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know what is so interesting? There's another point in this season where Stringer is essentially having a conversation with some of the drug dealers about business concepts. Mm-hmm. And he's challenging them to kind of
a class at the funeral home.
Yeah, he's so basically
he's having a meeting.
He's pulled together what we would call a brainstorming session.
Absolutely.
Where he is like literally he's like putting issues on the whiteboard and he's saying, let's now throw out solutions. And Bodie was able to bring great ideas and great perspective into that conversation. But so this is a person whose critical thinking skills exist, but he lacked the perspective to know that radio stations exist in a set radius.
It's crazy.
Nothing in his life had given him that information. Mm-mm. Right? So this is one of those things where you could see how standardized tests could enable some people to fail. Mm-hmm. Because you would take for granted a certain amount of basic understanding of how things work. But the reality is that basic level of understanding about how things work, it's very, very much framed by the circumstances of your life. You know, a basic SAT question about radios and how they work. This is a critical thinking question that Bodhi would have failed. Do you see what I'm saying? But we watched him just display excellent critical thinking skills in a business class.
And continuing with what you're talking about with Stringer basically taking the drug dealers to school.
We got to talk about that.
As you mentioned Stringer earlier, basically going rogue, right? He is doing things and making decisions without Avon's consideration. Avon is in the dark. Although I will make a caveat and say I do believe that Avon feels something. Avon doesn't know exactly what is going on, but I believe that he's having a sense that something is wrong.
I agree.
And Stringer is not telling him.
How do y'all think Stringer is going rogue?
So I say that Stringer.
How was Stringer not going rogue? Is my question to you.
Okay, let's talk about it. I think Brittany brought up a good. I want to talk about this one. How did Stringer? What's the first rogue thing he did, or one of the rogue things he did?
Well, one of the rogue things he did was having D killed. Now, we can get into the nuances of that, right? D, if you were anybody and you weren't a Barksdale, bro, you would have been dead a long time ago. Period. End of story. Question. There's no question. You were about to damn the whole organization out. Like, you would have been dead.
So how's that going
rogue? But it's going rogue because him and Avon never agreed upon it. That was not a discussion. Now, if him and Avon had some type of discussion a long time ago that was like, listen, if you see me getting a little too sensitive about something and I go do something behind my back, like, you know, and I don't want to know about it, but we haven't had that conversation. So right now, you look like you're just getting killed because he's messing up the organization.
Bro, why are you looking so skeptical about that? You don't agree that Avon, that Stringer was rogue when he killed D'Angelo?
But also the other part of it is him setting up a thing with Proposition Joe.
No, we got to go one at a time. We got to go one at a time.
Okay.
So do you have any, I'm about to speak on it, but do you?
I agree with Brittany. He was absolutely rogue because he and Avon, Stringer and Avon, had a conversation about how to deal with D'Angelo. And Avon said, listen, D'Angelo wants out of family protection and out of the family business. And Avon said, I've given him many chances and he is denying our protection and our benefits. And so I think I've extended enough of that. And Ava and Stringer agrees. So their agreement was for D'Angelo to no longer experience benefits or protection from them, but it was not to kill him.
Was that the best decision with the interest of the organization?
It wasn't, because D'Angelo had not at all presented himself as a threat. The only thing that he was doing was
wait.
The only thing.
I agree with that part.
The only thing D'Angelo was doing was he made it clear that he was not going to tell on the family. He just wanted out. He said that, and he said, "I'm just going to do my time." And so the only thing that he was doing was stressing Avon out. Other than being a stressor for Avon, and I'm going to say stress comes along with the job of being the head of a drug ring, so he's fine with dealing with stress. Other than being a distraction and a stressor for Avon, D'Angelo was no threat to them. What threat did he present? What possible threat did he present?
No.
I mean, he already did dime the whole organization out.
May I respond?
Please. He did not. He didn't dime them out.
Yes, he did. Remember? He did it before.
I waited very patiently.
Years.
I waited very patiently. May I respond? All right. Please. Number one, D'Angelo should have been killed episode 1, season 1. Because,
but he wasn't.
I just want to respond, and then I will allow you to. I just want to respond.
Okay.
I just want to respond.
Got it.
Time number one, he should have been killed because he
effed up
in a major way.
Yeah,
in a major way.
In a major way. Anybody else
would have been killed.
He would have been dead.
100%,
okay,
100%.
D'Angelo grew up in tragic circumstances, just like everybody else we're talking about.
That's right.
But he's choosing to be a part of the game. The second time he should have been gone was when he wrote that letter to Gantz. The Barksdale organization killed a witness, and they got D'Angelo to start writing a letter to the witness's children
that weren't even real.
In a way to get him to confess. Second time he should have died. Third time, and this is what Brittany is talking about, he actually snitched. He was sitting there with them, running down the picture. He was talking about the pictures. He was talking about the whole organization. And he was about to flip on everybody until Brianna, his mom, came down and got him to take the 20 years. Now, what we're talking about is, even if he doesn't think he's a threat, number one, you already snitched, so that's already in every situation, you're already gone.
Yeah.
But beyond that, now you've shown yourself to be weak in several situations. Why in the world would we think you could take 20 years? You haven't even shown yourself to be able to stand up in these other smaller circumstances. That being able to stand up for 20 years, that he couldn't even take a beat down, which started this whole situation. So he's shown, even if, and I believe this. I believe he would have made the 20 years.
I do too.
But what I'm saying is, from the organization's perspective, he is one of the family. He could take down that entire organization. There is no drug organization in the world who would let that slide. You're not going to let that slide. So even if D'Angelo truly believed in his heart he was going to make the 20 years, they have no reason to trust that based on his actions. It's not like he's...
But bro, you know who you sound like right now, straight up? You sound like Stringer, okay? Because, bro, so exactly. One of the things that we texted about while me and Brittany were watching...
Before we get... What did Weebay say? Matter of fact, go to your text. I'll go back to my point. What were you saying on the text?
I was saying that what we all agreed on via text was that, and I think Brittany asserted this observation. She was like, Stringer is making business decisions and seems to have a great business acumen, but Avon is the one that understands and champions the rules of the streets. And they need each other, because without Avon to offset Stringer is trying to run a street business without the rules of the streets. He's trying to just make straight up business-led decisions. And what Avon actually even ends up explicitly saying to Stringer at some point is, you're forgetting about the rules of the streets. And that's different from 1 + 1 = 2. And so the fact that D'Angelo continues to live, it is not about business. He continues to live because the rule of the street is family first.
Wrong. That's Avon's rule.
Well, listen,
That's
bro.
Avon's rule.
Bro.
That's Avon's rule.
The reason why I would say that it is bigger than Avon's rule, I would say it's a rule of the Barksdale organization, because even the mom, I mean, it's the whole handling of D'Angelo, the whole thing. Oh my gosh. There was even a conversation where Proposition Joe was talking to the Greeks organization, and they were talking about Ziggy being stupid in the Sabatka family, and they were talking about how stupid Ziggy was, but you can't even kill him because he's family. And Proposition Joe said, I have some
got a couple like that.
I got some dum-dums in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't, and they're effing up my business left and right. I can't even kill them because they're family.
Because my aunts will come and say something or something like that.
We had several instances where they confirmed that it is a rule of the street that you don't kill family.
Well, that's why.
But that's that. So the point is that the Stringer killing D'Angelo was a business decision that was a violation of the streets.
Well,
is what I'm saying.
I'm just saying that in my mind, when you're talking about because we don't know what Prop Joe's nephew did.
He said he was effing up their business. He said, I have family members effing up my business left and right.
I understand, but
I can't kill them because they're family.
What I'm saying is that we don't know what that family member did, because even if family gets a lot of passes, you don't get a pass after you are putting the whole organization.
But if that was the case, then why would Stringer have to do it behind Avon's back?
Because
if what you're saying is true, then why would he have to do it behind Avon's back?
Because
answer me this.
I'm about to answer. Let me answer your question.
Well, answer the question.
Because
answer the question.
This is just like how it is in real life.
It is a reasonable question. Answer this question.
Brianna,
and I will hold my peace.
Okay. Brianna and Avon are too close to make the right decision. They're just too close.
You all obviously haven't been in the streets. You're just not getting it.
You should wear your streety outfit next time.
I have on one right now.
She has on her streety earrings right now. Those are her streety earrings.
Okay, all right. Yeah, but listen. So ultimately what I'm saying is Stringer did not go rogue, in my opinion, because he made the correct decision, because Avon wasn't able to, and Brianna definitely wasn't able to, because that's their blood. And what I'm saying is that if somebody has violated over and over again, and the entire organization rests upon his weak back as far as Stringer could tell, and even if, listen, Stringer was even trying to at least get that feeling that we're cool. But D keeps saying he don't care about them. Leave me alone. I'm doing, cut me off. Edit that burp out. Cut me off, and all that kind of stuff. But
that's in there.
Oh yeah, it's staying in. Big time.
That's in there.
Yeah.
But he's doing all this stuff, and what I'm saying is D'Angelo had to go, and Avon couldn't make the decision. And when you're in second, the purpose of Stringer is to be able to step up where Avon is going to fall short. And I'm just saying that was the best, since that was the best, and in my opinion, only decision. Imagine how many times he bucked Stringer and Avon. How many times he bucked them. And I'm just saying, you can't do that and expect to live. It's just not
all I know is that that's just not how the hierarchy works. This kind of kill decision, you can't make that as the number two. Avon had to make that call. The thing about the streets, and I understand the two of you haven't been in the streets, and that's why you're not getting it. But the way that things work in the streets, you live by family.
I wish we were live.
You live by family. You die by family. I just think and what we all have to also remember is that Stringer was actually having sex with D'Angelo's
I don't
girlfriend.
think that was whack, but it didn't have nothing to do with his decision.
I disagree.
And absolutely nothing. Because when he now I want you to think about this. What did Weebay say when he was talking to Avon about D'Angelo's supposed suicide. Do you remember?
That he was always weak.
And it might have been for the best. Now, this is Wee-Bey, Avon's top soldier. And imagine how watered down.
Y'all, Wee-Bey is chilling in jail.
Look,
I just wanted to put that out there.
But what I'm saying is Wee-Bey said to Avon, you know, he might start thinking he couldn't do those years. It might have been for the best. Now, that's the watered down version of what Wee-Bey would have actually said, which is, yeah, that dude had to go. But he watered it down because he was talking to Avon. Even when Bodie was talking about him, he was talking about how the heart pump Kool-Aid, he wasn't made for this. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, and we're not going to go around and around. We've reached the impasse.
Yeah, we're at an impasse on this.
But yes, I want to be emphatic that no, I don't think he was rogue on that. So, Brittany, you were talking about he was doing the best for the organization. So that's not rogue to me. If you're a boss,
I will say I agree with both perspectives. Is that you're rogue in the sense that you're supposed to run everything by Avon, but you're not rogue in the sense that you were making a decision and killing someone that should have been dead a long time ago. If we were going by these rules. But he would also, on the other side of that, he is family.
That's
and it was
the rule.
supposed to be family first.
That's the rule.
So, I don't think.
Listen.
And even when we're talking about Prop Joe, he's a businessman, but he's ruthless.
He is, but even he said his family's effing everything.
But we don't know what they did.
We don't know what they did.
We don't know what he did.
But his statement about family was that they are exempt.
But I'm saying you don't know what he did, so you can't compare the two. What you would have to see is his nephew diming on the whole organization and Joe letting that slide. That's what you would need to see.
You're right.
And even if they were letting some stuff slide, that's different. Okay. Shooting a dude for no reason.
You know what? Okay. I agree that we are at an impasse.
Okay.
I will say that we in agreement that Stringer had been demonstrating he had been making some decisions. So I guess what I'm saying is if the killing of D'Angelo was an isolated decision of Stringer going against Avon, that would have been one thing.
Right. That's what. So what's the next one?
The next one is the decision to partner with Proposition Joe. Britt, you were just about to talk about that one. His decision to work with Proposition Joe.
So get into it.
Because there was, their drugs weren't doing well. For whatever reason, their organization,
their supplier had let them go.
Their supplier and their drugs were getting weak, and the crackheads knew that it wasn't doing anything.
That's right.
And so,
well, they had. Remember, they lost the New York connect they had because of all the drama that happened. Just like Janai talked about, they lost their connection. So Avon hooked up that dude in Atlanta, and when they got the Atlanta dude's drugs, it was only 10% pure.
It was whack. It was whack. They had no supply, and Proposition Joe is like, well, I've got top-notch product. You've got top-notch territory. I'll take some of your top-notch territory and I'll give you some of my top-notch product. And instead of taking that idea right to Avon and being very forthright,
he did.
And Avon said, no, we fought for that property. We're not giving it up. And then it was like, here goes Stringer like, you right. But he gives away 3 towers.
And he does it anyway.
Proposition Show. Exactly.
He does it anyway.
But
quick question.
Even with that being said.
Quick question. What would have happened had he not done that?
Well, I got to tell you, the business would have suffered, but the street rules would have been followed.
Intact.
I think watching The Wire has really made Janai feel like she's a gangster on some level.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this.
It's these streets.
What was happening before Stringer got with Prop Joe? What was happening?
The business was failing.
And failing in these situations doesn't mean that you file Chapter 11 and you go set up in another city. It means people die.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is Stringer is in this situation where he knows what's going to happen. Avon's not out there. He knows his people are banging over nothing. They're banging over nothing. He sees what's happening, what's unfolding.
So you're saying that it is a valid reason because the judgment of the leader, the decision made by the leader was the wrong one, that it's okay to go behind the leader's back. That's what you're saying. Yes, in this circumstance, because when you are a good number two, in my mind, knows when they have to make the hard decision. And even if the number one doesn't see it. And what we're talking about is, and this is going to spin us off into another conversation, but Stringer's out here looking at his people just had a shootout, which resulted in the death of an innocent child, which ramped up police through the whole city. Yeah.
And the reason why they were banging on that corner was the fiends were going to that corner because they had weak product. If they did have weak product, the fiends would have been going to that corner. So Bodie had to go to where the fiends were at. So he had to go bang the other guys off the corner. That wouldn't have happened if he had Prop Joe's package. And
bro, I'm not disagreeing with any of that, but what I'm saying is I think of the job of the number two, and actually I will just say this, I am a number two, like this is what I do for a living. I think the job of the number two is to either bring the number one around so that they understand the reality of the situation, or to find another solution that supports and enables the leadership of the number one. So I think Stringer's actual job was to go and find another supply chain. That's what he needed to do. It was not to go and share Proposition Joe's supply chain.
Well, I mean, I think we might be
at another impasse.
No. Well, I mean, we're definitely at an impasse, but I'm saying we might be underestimating what's involved with getting a solid connect.
That's true.
Maybe, sure. Absolutely.
So I'm just saying, and when we look at what happened afterwards, they were extremely profitable by giving up those towers. Yeah. One of the things and that is, and what I'm saying is that
the other part. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, sis.
No. Go ahead, sis, because I was just vamping on that point.
The other part is that Stringer is not understanding, though, that there's still outfall from his decisions. So the fact that they called the assassin from New York to come, and no one, and Brother Mouzone, they're caught up now, and
so good.
They're caught up now. People are like, okay, so Stringer's saying that we can have these towers. Brother Mouzone is like, no, you can't. You need to go. You're dead, Method Man.
Exactly.
I don't remember his.
That's
Bubbles.
what happens when leaders
you're
are not
dead,
in
Bubbles. Like you're getting shot. Also, you have Doobie. What's his name? Doughboy. Bodie. You have Bodie.
Can Brittany please learn any of the names? Any!
Bodie.
Did she call him Doobie?
You have Lil Doobie, Lil Bodie.
We gotta wrap this one up.
We do. This is long.
Oh, okay.
This
is 18 hours.
Are you gonna edit it down a little bit?
I could.
Well,
I don't know.
Anyway, go ahead, Brittany.
I don't think you should.
We've never edited it to this point.
Cool.
You know.
Cool.
You also have Bodhi questioning, like, if XYZ is not matching, this is not matching ABC, because he's not used to that type of thing happening. Anytime something is going on, it's all in sync. Everyone knows. So why is this happening, but this is happening? So while I understand Stringer's decision making, I do also see that there is potential for things to crumble underneath when you start seeing that leadership is not cohesive. It has the potential. I don't know.
No doubt.
But it has the potential.
He didn't have any good decisions to make. He was just choosing the best of worst. All right.
And I will say this before, because I don't want to move from when you were talking about the child that got murdered. I will say, bro, Aubrey said to Janai.
Can I bring this up? Can I bring this one up, please?
Yes.
Because in the beginning, I told my sisters that the wire was going to get them. They were going to cry at some point. And that scene, there's a scene that we've been talking about where Bodhi of the Barksdale organization decided to go and get a corner that had a lot of activity.
That belonged to somebody else.
So they ended up having a shootout, and nobody died except for an innocent boy in a house who was just watching.
Innocent 9-year-old getting ready for school.
And Brittany was texting me like this was something that actually happened in real life. Like she was real life.
Because it is something that happens in real life.
Yes.
Listen, you guys, if I could have videotaped myself, I was literally on the couch eating like my breakfast, and I was in full on tears. I was in as if I was watching a news story. I was like, what? And then the scene, and not too long after that, because the mother is now calling for justice. This is the hard part of the Black community, right? My child is dead. They were dying because of what would seem now gang shootings and drug dealer shootings. And now the only people I can call to solve my issue are police officers, who the police officers then go into these communities without any rhyme or reason, and they are arresting Black men left and right. Even some running out of their van saying, "You know the deal." What do you mean, do I know the deal? I don't know no damn deal.
They said, like, we're just going to go crack some heads or something. They're just lining them up.
The boys are starting to, the men, you see them walking away from the police because, like, I'm just sitting here on a bench. But now I'm on the floor, on the ground, in rows of people sitting, some laying on their bellies. And this began to make me cry even more because I'm thinking of slave ships at this point. I'm thinking of watching our Black men be hunted. This is literally what's happening, but then also looking at police officers who are Black men having this war within themselves. Because now they're the power, right? They're the powers that be. You see one example of one that he is like feeling himself, and then you see another one that's like, I can't believe this is happening right now. Like his mind is like, and we're doing this. Like we have to do this. It was so much
complex.
Hard.
So much complexity.
It's
so much complexity.
It's almost like if somebody was in a position to make a decision to try to stop that kind of stuff, they should probably make that decision.
I hate Aubrey.
It's almost
they
like
should. They should. I know, because justice in America is so
even if some uninformed people
it's so
call them
clear,
rogue.
and the code of American justice is definitely more valid and less corrupt than the code of the streets.
Well, listen.
Because why? Somebody got a gun and somebody got his briefcase. Hello.
Omar said it.
Omar said it.
Yo, That was another one I was excited.
I know we got to wrap. I know we got to wrap.
Can we wrap
on that?
Brittany, talk on that one, Brittany, before we.
That's a wrap. That's a good.
No. I want to close on that. So let me interject one point before we close on that, because that's a closer.
Oh, that's a closer.
But I wanted to make a point of how realistic the drug dens were. That I've never been in a drug den, but yo, they even when Bubbles and what's the name was in that place where they, that burnt out house where they were all high, and Bubbles was just, and they even had spit. I was like, oh my God. And like, it was like you could smell it just by looking at it. I'm just like, how did they?
I've never been in one for real, but I've seen cop shows where they're in them, and it looked just like that.
I mean, anyway, so I just
wonder where they get all this paper from. There's always so much paper everywhere. It's just gross.
I love both of my sisters.
Zeroing in on the paper.
I just
so much. So many other things.
That was such a Brittany thing to say. That I just love it. What's all this paper?
Why isn't anyone recycling?
It's so much crumpled up paper. Where are they getting all this paper?
We went through just our normal conversation. We literally touched on every point I wanted to touch on.
That's
so
great.
Brittany, close us up with one of the best scenes.
Oh my gosh. This scene, if the whole wire just stopped after the scene, they sent their message is clear.
So Omar, in perfect Omar fashion, the stick-up kid.
Oh, good.
He was on the stand to put Fredro Starr. I don't remember Fredro Starr's name in the show. He was on the stand to put him.
His name is Bird, Brittany.
Bird. He was cute to me. He's been cute all my life. But listen, Bird.
And for anybody who's listening and watching, we're not doing this for dramatic effect.
Cue from Moesha.
Brittany, just the part of her brain that connects fake names, that just doesn't work. But all right, go ahead. So he was putting, and why was he putting Bird? Why was he
Bird? He was putting Bird in jail because Bird killed his boyfriend.
Yep.
And they didn't just kill his boyfriend; they tore him up.
They tortured him.
They tortured him. And so, at this point, Omar is like, oh, well, everybody could go down. I'll tell as many secrets. Now, Omar gets on the stand, and he's not lying at any point. Omar is telling the truth. But Bird's lawyer, who is the lawyer of the Barksdales, of the Barksdale organization, he is going after Omar and basically saying, so you just walk around with this shotgun and doing certain things. And Omar says to him very nicely, well, I have a shotgun and you have a briefcase. But we were doing the same thing before the same. And it caught the lawyer off guard to the point where he didn't have anything else to say because he knew it was true.
The lawyer was really trying to discredit Omar. He was trying. He was like, you are the leech that is sucking off the dregs of, he was basically saying, you are victimizing your own community. You are the reason that you are profiting off of the death of your community and the death of community and the death of people and drugs. And Omar just said, yeah, that's the game. I do it with a gun, you do it with a briefcase, but here we are.
And the courtroom laughs and he makes him look stupid because he knows it's the truth. But this is the other part of trusting someone to be your lawyer, but they're also looking down on you. Because if we even remember from season 1, when that same lawyer went to come get D from the police station, he slaps D in the back of the head. No respect for these individuals. This is just money right now. This is just money, which we can get into some more nuanced things about that, but we won't.
We'll have
because
time.
We need to wrap up.
We'll have time because it always comes back to money and power. I haven't seen the other seasons, but I know we'll have time to talk about money and power. because that's what it always comes down to in this here life.
So let's vote.
Well, the vote, does The Wire Season 2 get your container?
Yes, I have a full container with lots of illegal contraband in it.
Yeah.
It gets my vote, of course.
Yeah, I give
Spoiler alert.
I give season 2 my container as well.
And my container is full of women and crack.
Wow. You're just like the Greeks. Can I say one thing before we wrap up?
We had enough money to escape the country. Them jokers left.
It was like millions of dollars of drugs.
He put his cigarette out and they got on the plane and left.
And he said something like, part of being a man is knowing when to leave.
And the other part of that too, he said, and I'm not even Greek.
They call me the Greek.
Like,
man,
I'm not even Greek.
Another thing we could have spent time
So
talking
good.
about was how the drug dealers in the white part of town, how they were just operating without a fear of police.
Oh
just,
man. And it was Herc that called it out.
Yeah.
Herc was like, he said it like
he said, I'll go up to them like, I would like some drugs. And they were like, how much drugs would you like?
He was like, we need some different rules to police the white boys. He said, because these rules are set up for the black boys.
We could get in a whole nother one.
Oh, we so could.
But
because we did talk about what's his face, the smart cop. Freeman. Because Freeman said that. He was like, no, they're not doing any codes on their phones because they wouldn't think that we would be on their phones.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
The Wire is nuanced.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for y'all to watch season 3.
Oh,
I'm so
Which one
excited.
is season 3?
Season 3 is the politics. And I cannot wait.
This is going to get me already because you know what? I struggle.
Let me let you know.
With this whole zone.
Yeah. Buckle in, buddy. Buckle in. And I figured out why my background stopped working.
What was it?
Because my spotlight is running out. It's on batteries. And so my spotlight is dying. That's why.
Well, you know what? We're getting better and better at home studios. I feel like episode by episode, we're adding better equipment and lighting.
Yes, perfect. But
we're getting much better.
I just wanted to create the kind of content that people could listen to in the background while they're doing something else. Because that's my favorite kind of content.
Yeah.
I love that kind.
Yeah.
I love that kind of content.
That's the good stuff.
All
well,
right.
y'all, so our next episode will
what we could have done is do rags for this episode too. For this.
No, containers, you hit it.
Containers was
good.
right. There's nothing better than containers.
But Aubrey also has funny text messages as well, you guys. Because he was like, I don't understand why the white boys are wearing do-rags. They're not.
Because Aubrey was like, do-rags serve a functional purpose.
They have a function.
It's so crazy that.
But that is the pervasive nature of cultural appropriation.
Well,
you just take it. It doesn't have to make sense. You just take it.
Doesn't have to make sense. I'm laying down my straight hairs.
So our next episode, which will be The Wire Season 3, it will release on August 22nd.
All right.
And that'll be Season 3.
Well, actually, it's going to release the 23rd because that's when we do it live. Sunday.
Oh, if we were going to do it
23rd.
live, we would do it live Sunday the 16th.
The 16th.
So that it will be posted, it will be released on the 23rd, among the 22nd.
Well, y'all just let me know what I have to do because.
Okay, so live stream Season 3, August 16th, and then it'll be posted on all channels on Saturday the 22nd. Yes.
Boom.
All right.
Okay, thank you everyone for listening. This has been The Wright Perspective. Bye.
Bye.